Ever feel like you're stuck just reacting to stuff? Like you're always on the back foot instead of in control?
Yeah, I totally get that.
Well, today we're diving into something that's super relevant, whether you're leading a team, trying to hit a personal goal, really anything. It's all about planning.
Planning and management. Right.
You got it. And I bet you're here with us because you're the kind of person who wants to get a grip on the important stuff quickly, right? No need for all that dense textbook jargon, just clear and usable insights.
Absolutely. That's what we're aiming for.
We've got some university-level management course material as our jumping-off point today.
So think of us like your guides, distilling this complex stuff into those nuggets of wisdom you can actually apply.
Exactly. So let's cut to the chase. What is planning, really?
Well, our source gives us a few different angles.
Yeah.
It calls it a complex and comprehensive process. And it even mentions that the stages involved often overlap. They're not always perfectly distinct.
So it's not like a step-by-step recipe you just follow.
Right. It's much more dynamic than that.
Right.
And it really emphasizes the mental aspect of planning, too.
Oh, interesting.
It describes it as a mental exercise, demanding both imagination and foresight, that proactive thinking before doing element.
For our listeners, that ability to anticipate, that's like a superpower, isn't it?
I love that analogy. It really is. And then the third way our source defines planning, I think this one really clicks. Deciding in advance what is to be done.
So it's about intentionally shaping the future.
Exactly. It's about setting objectives, outlining those policies, establishing those procedures. It's about making choices now that will create the results you want later.
And our source doesn't shy away from how important this all is. It straight up calls planning the central function of management. It even says it pervades everything a manager does.
Right. That's a pretty strong statement.
It is.
It makes you realize that whether it's organizing resources, guiding a team, or even measuring how well things are going, planning is the underlying framework. It's like the foundation upon which everything else is built.
I'm already thinking about how I can apply this to my own work, to be honest. It's like taking that step back and saying, okay, this is where I want to end up. Now, how do I get there?
Exactly. And to really understand the nuts and bolts of planning, let's delve into some of its key features. Our material highlights a few.
Okay, lay them on us.
Well, first up is that planning is goal-oriented.
Makes sense. You don't plan just for the sake of planning. You have a target in mind.
Exactly. It's about having that clear objective, that desired outcome. And then, very closely linked to that, is the fact that planning is future-oriented.
Well, yeah. You can't plan for what's already happened, but it's more than that, right? It's about intentionally shaping what that future looks like.
Absolutely. It involves analyzing trends, trying to foresee those potential challenges and opportunities, and making decisions in the present that will have a significant impact down the road.
So, like, if you see a potential problem brewing, planning helps you address it before it becomes a crisis.
Exactly. And the next feature our source highlights is that planning is an intellectual process.
It's not just about going with your gut, is it?
Not at all. It requires critical thinking, carefully analyzing information and creatively solving problems. It's about engaging your mind fully, considering all the possibilities and potential roadblocks.
And then there's the fact that planning is the primary function of management. We touched on this, but it really is foundational, isn't it?
Absolutely. Think of it like this. You wouldn't start building a house without detailed blueprints, right?
Right.
In the same way, you can't effectively organize, lead, or control anything without first having a solid plan in place. Planning sets the stage for everything else.
And it's not just for those at the top either. Our source says planning is pervasive.
Exactly. It happens at all levels of an organization, from the CEO setting the long-term vision all the way down to someone planning their daily tasks.
And it's not a one-and-done kind of thing, right? Planning is continuous.
That's such a crucial point. Think about it. The world is constantly changing. New technologies pop up, markets shift, competitors emerge. Plans need to be flexible, living documents that you regularly review and adapt as needed.
So it's an ongoing process.
Absolutely. It's a cycle of assessing, adjusting, and evolving.
And finally, our source points out that planning aims at efficiency, which makes sense. I mean, who doesn't want to make the most of their time, money, and effort, right?
Exactly. Good planning helps minimize waste, streamline your workflows, and ensure you're focusing your resources on the things that matter most.
Okay, so we've got a pretty solid grasp on what planning is and why it matters.
Right.
But let's dive into those benefits. What are the real advantages of putting in the effort to plan?
Our source highlights several key benefits. First off, it emphasizes making objectives clear.
Which might seem obvious, but I think it's easy to get caught up in the day-to-day and lose sight of the bigger picture.
Exactly. Having a well-articulated plan is like having a roadmap. It ensures everyone understands the destination and stays aligned.
Like everyone's rowing in the same direction.
Exactly. The second benefit is that it helps the organization stay on the right path.
It's like having a navigation system that prevents you from veering off course.
Precisely. It provides that essential sense of direction, helping maintain focus on those overarching goals, even when unexpected challenges come up.
Which they always do.
They do. Another crucial benefit is that planning reduces risk and uncertainty.
But how much can you really plan for? You can't predict everything, right?
That's true. You can't eliminate uncertainty completely. But planning involves carefully considering different scenarios, identifying those potential pitfalls, and developing backup strategies.
So it's about being prepared.
Exactly. This proactive approach can significantly soften the blow if something unexpected does happen.
Okay, that makes sense. Our source also mentions that planning improves the efficiency of operations. We touched on this a bit earlier.
We did, but it's worth repeating because it's so crucial. By mapping out processes, strategically allocating your resources, and setting those timelines, planning really helps smooth out operations and reduce wasted effort.
Streamlining things, making things run smoothly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And here's a big one. Planning provides the basis for control.
Meaning what exactly?
It means you can actually measure how you're doing. Your plans become the benchmark against which you evaluate your actual performance.
Oh, so it's about checking if you're on track to meet your goals.
Exactly. Without a clear plan, it's almost impossible to know if you're succeeding or if you need to make adjustments. The source also highlights that planning facilitates decision-making.
How so?
Well, when you have a well-defined plan with clear objectives and strategies, it creates this framework for evaluating options and making choices that are in line with your overall goals. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of the equation.
So it makes decision-making more objective.
Precisely. And lastly, planning is crucial for effective coordination.
I can see how that would be especially important for larger teams or projects.
It is. When you've got multiple moving parts, different teams or individuals all working towards a common goal, a well-communicated plan is essential.
It keeps everyone on the same page.
Exactly. It helps ensure that everyone understands their role, their responsibilities, and how their efforts fit into the bigger picture. It minimizes the chances of conflict or duplicated work.
Okay, so we've established that planning is essential. But is there a right way to do it?
Great question. Our source talks about some fundamental principles of planning that can guide us.
Okay, what are they?
The first one is the principle of contribution to objectives.
Meaning everything you do should be aligned with those big picture goals.
Exactly. Every single planning activity, no matter how small, should support and contribute to the overall organizational goals.
No one's off doing their own thing.
Right. And then there's the principle of pervasiveness of planning, which we've already talked about a bit. It basically reinforces that planning is essential at every level of an organization.
Got it. And then there's this interesting one, the principle of limiting factors. What's that about?
This principle emphasizes identifying and focusing on those constraints or obstacles that might get in your way.
No, like what could potentially derail your plans?
Exactly. It's about finding those bottlenecks and figuring out how to deal with them strategically.
So for a small business, a limiting factor might be, say, a lack of funding, right?
Exactly. And their planning would need to focus heavily on addressing that.
Okay, makes sense. What's next?
Well, then we have the principle of flexibility. This one circles back to the idea that things are always changing.
Like plans need to be adaptable.
Absolutely. They can't be rigid. Effective plans need to be able to accommodate unexpected changes or new information.
So be prepared to pivot.
Exactly. And finally, there's the principle of navigational change.
So it's not enough to just create a plan and then forget about it?
Right. This principle stresses the importance of regularly reviewing your plans, monitoring your progress, and being ready to make those necessary adjustments. Planning is a continuous journey, not a one-time event.
Got it. So our source also breaks down different kinds of planning based on a couple of criteria.
Yeah.
Let's start with the time dimension.
Okay.
We've got long-range planning.
This is all about looking ahead, way ahead, typically several years, 5, 10, or even more. The focus here is on establishing those big, long-term strategic goals. Where do we as an organization want to be in the future? What's our vision?
So like the overarching goals.
Exactly. Then there's medium-range planning.
this sounds like the bridge between those long-term aspirations and the day-to-day stuff.
Right. It's about taking those long-term goals and breaking them down into more concrete objectives and initiatives.
Things that need to be accomplished within a shorter time frame.
Exactly, say 1 to 3 years. This is where you start outlining the how of achieving those distant goals.
And then there's short-range planning, which is all about the here and now.
Absolutely. This focuses on the very near term, typically a year or less, dealing with those day-to-day activities and actions that will lead to achieving the short-term objectives, which then contribute to those medium and long-range plans.
So each level feeds into the next.
Precisely. They're all interconnected. Our source also categorizes planning by nature or level within an organization.
Okay.
And here we start with strategic planning, which, as the name suggests, happens at the highest level.
It's the big picture stuff, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Strategic planning is about establishing those master plans that determine the fundamental direction of the firm, its core identity.
The source mentions the destiny of the firm.
Right. And that's no exaggeration. These are the foundational choices that will shape the organization for years to come.
So you really have to get this right.
You do. Then there's tactical planning, which takes those strategic plans and translates them into action.
It's more specific, right?
Exactly. Tactical planning breaks things down into actionable goals and plans for specific departments or teams. So if the strategic plan is to, say, expand into new markets, the marketing department might develop a tactical plan for how to reach those new customers.
So strategy sets the direction, and tactics are about how to get there.
Perfect analogy. And then there's operational planning, which is all about the nitty-gritty detail.
It's about execution.
Exactly. Operational planning is about figuring out those very specific procedures and actions needed at the lower levels of the organization.
So it's like, okay, here's how we actually do this thing.
Exactly. Think production schedules, customer service protocols, that sort of thing.
So it's the most granular level of planning.
Precisely. It's about ensuring everything runs smoothly at the ground level, making sure those daily activities directly support the bigger picture.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, the last category our source uses for kinds of planning is by business functions. This makes sense because different departments like marketing or finance are going to have their own specific planning needs.
Exactly. And this is where functional planning comes in.
It's tailored to each department.
Exactly. It's about creating plans that are specific to the activities and needs of each functional area within the business.
So the HR department will have a human resources plan, marketing will have a marketing plan, and so on.
Exactly. It provides a focused roadmap for each department, making sure their objectives and strategies align with those overall organizational goals.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. What planning is, why it matters, its key features and principles, and all those different kinds of planning.
We have.
Now, the very last section in our source is simply titled, The Process of Planning. And then, nothing. No actual steps are listed.
You know what? I think that's actually really interesting. Our source gives us all this foundational knowledge about planning, but then it stops short of telling us exactly how to do it.
Yeah, why do you think that is?
Well, to me, it highlights that while the concept of planning is universal, the specific process can vary depending on the situation. It's like saying, hey, here's what planning is. Now you figure out the best way to do it. It's almost an invitation to further exploration.
It leaves us wanting more.
Exactly. But it does reinforce that planning is a deliberate and organized activity. It's not about just winging it, but about following a structured approach to achieve your goals.
So, to wrap things up, planning is a crucial management function that's about so much more than just setting goals.
Right.
It involves thinking ahead, making strategic decisions, and being flexible enough to adapt as needed. And it's relevant for everyone, whether you're leading a team or working on your own personal projects.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
Understanding these core planning principles can be a game changer in how you approach any kind of organized effort, big or small.
Absolutely. So here's something to think about as you go about your day. We talked about strategic, tactical, and operational planning. Which of these levels do you think is the most crucial for overall success? And why might different organizations prioritize them differently?
That's a great question to ponder.
It is, and thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Thanks, everyone.